Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the second last webinar of our series. This one, Simple Steps to Becoming an Ally. My name is Lindsay Sparks, and I'm Regional Rep with the Calgary Regional Office. And with me is...
I'm Dolly Ablett, and I'm with the Calgary Regional Office as well. And with us is...
Monica Dougal. I work in the Winnipeg Regional Office.
Thanks, Monica.
Joining us tonight is the Regional Executive Vice President for the Prairies, Marianne Aldoon, and I'll ask her to come on and say a few words.
Perfect. Thank you, Lindsay. So before we begin the evening, can you just give me a nod, Dolly, if you can hear me okay? Perfect. Thank you. Some days there's major headset issues. So the first thing that I want to do is, of course, do the land acknowledgement. So tonight's webinar is being sponsored by our staff in Calgary. So we'll use the land acknowledgement for the Calgary area. Calgary is situated on the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy comprising the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta. And in keeping with, apologies, I'm like flipping through, I also do want to acknowledge PSAC's commitment to being an active partner to address systemic racism together. So, I will say that this webinar was planned months ago at the beginning of the COVID shutdown. And at that time, we had no idea how relevant this subject matter would be. And in recent weeks, we've seen the images of racism, we've seen the pain, but we've also seen communities coming together in support. And so, tonight I think we're going to explore something that will be very personal for us. It's really easy to say, well, yeah, I'll be an ally, or to declare that you're an ally. But what does that really mean? So, sharing a post on social media makes us feel good. But what we really need to do is be part of a system that's going to dismantle, the structures and the behaviors in our community and in our workplaces. So how do we ensure that we provide space for racialized people and that we're not telling them how they should feel or what they should do? I'm a white woman. I'm not going to tell someone how they can feel. But I will say that I truly appreciate this subject matter tonight, just for my own personal growth. And I really want to thank our staff who are putting this forward. There's some difficult questions that we all have to ask ourselves, and we're going to have to stop and do a check-in, a self-check-in after this is over, and recognize that we can all do more and we all should do more. And, PSAC nationally, but also myself as an elected official of PSAC, we're committed to being part of the solution and to the reconciliation and to really truly ensuring that our racialized and our marginalized members' voices are heard. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Lindsay and Dolly to get to the content tonight. And I will be available at the end for questions, and we'll be learning and taking it all in as everyone else is. So thanks so much.
Whoops. Are you there, Dolly? Dolly?
Here I am talking away and I forgot to unmute myself.
I was
My
just going to
dogs were
start there.
barking. I, you know, I, I'm not shy on the web anymore. My dogs were barking way earlier, so I was like, get them downstairs. So the objectives tonight, folks, are to take this webinar and expand your personal awareness of how to become a better ally. What can you do? Sharing, first of all, we're going to share the definition of what we think it means to be an ally and describe some actions that you can demonstrate better allyship with. And we're going to do this through sharing examples with each other and having some conversation or discussion around that. And then we want to, at the end, begin the conversation in our region about how we can become active allies, all of us working together. So those are our objectives. Lindsay? You're muted too, Lindsay.
I was doing that yesterday too. I don't know why, I just keep doing that. Anyways, we often have members from across the different regions listening in on our prairie webinars. They become quite popular. And we take a poll every now and then, well, actually at everyone, to see just where you're listening from. But this one's a little bit different. And I'm just going to pull it up here. All right, so this one here is, the question is basically, where are you joining from? So you've got several different options there. And you can see the little map that's in front of you that has the treaties. So if you're joining from Treaty 7, the Métis Nation of Alberta, if you're joining from Treaty 6, the Métis Nation of Alberta region. Sorry, my screen isn't big enough to read my notes here. Give me 1 second. There we go. Region 5, sorry. Treaty 6, homeland of the Métis Nation. Treaty 4 and Treaty 6. Oh, they all say the. Did I get this right?
Yes, you did. The homeland of the
Okay,
Métis Nation is pretty big.
Okay, it certainly is. I'm looking, going, wow, it's big. And Treaty 1 territory, and also homeland of the Métis Nation as well. All right, so just take a couple of minutes to click on the box that identifies you. And the reason why we're doing this is we want to sort of educate you a bit on treaty territory, because as you know, at every PSAC function, we always acknowledge that we are on treaty territory.
Lindsay, I don't see the poll. Should I be seeing it the same as everyone
coming
else?
up.
There it
There we
is.
go.
Okay.
Do we have poll music, Lindsay? Folks may not know, but Lindsay in a former life was a DJ.
Well, he was our DJ last night for the Party on the Prairies, which was just awesome. Great job done by all, minus the technical glitches.
Mm-hmm.
So Lindsay, I just want to mention, I have a question here that is saying that they can only see, they don't see the poll, but only the option to select an answer.
Yeah, and then that will come up after, like, select an answer, and then I'll show the poll once that's done.
So folks take some time to actually do the poll, and then we'll share the results, right, Lindsay?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's on the screen right now, Lindsay, is the results, all at 0.
Ah, okay. Oh, the poll closed. I see what happened. Both of the polls closed. You know, when we tested them
Can you
this
open
afternoon,
them?
this afternoon, and it closed it and didn't open it again. That's why. Okay, what we're going to ask you to do, just so that we can make this a little easier. Unfortunately, like I said, we were testing it this afternoon, and it closed on us, and when we finished with it, and then it just wouldn't reopen again. So anyways, you do have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 options, and if you want, you can just stick it into the chat button and tell us what number where you're from. Monica, can you give us an idea of some of the answers? And I guess they're in the question box there.
Yeah, I was just about to check in to see if folks had a chance to do that. So I see several have identified from number 1 and number 5, 4, Treaty 6, someone wrote, Zone 4, Métis Nation. Number 3, 6 and 4. So I think that number 2 has not been identified.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Let's continue on. We're going to talk about tonight, we're going to cover what exactly is an ally, and we're going to give you a definition of it, why are allies important. We're going to watch a really cool, it's a Netflix video that they show to employees when they are hired at Netflix, and it's really good. In fact, it's so good, we're going to watch it twice. We're going to talk about how do I become an ally, of course, the big question. Another video of 5 steps to becoming an ally. We're going to talk about the do's and the don'ts of being an ally. The next is systemic racism explained. It's a really cute video. And what can I do now in my union, my workplace, my community? We'll give you some ideas. You can give us some ideas. We'll have a discussion and some brainstorming, and then we're going to watch the Netflix ally video again a second time, because you'll have a little more information, and we're hoping that it will sink in a little better. And then discussion and questions. Dolly?
Okay, I actually have on my screen, and I don't know why, I'm going to just click escape. I've got the poll results stuck on my screen for some reason.
Huh.
So I don't know why that is.
Let me take a look here and see what's going on here.
Why would I have poll, like I can, oh, there I am, the slide's back. Okay, thank you, Lindsay. I don't know if that was the case for everybody, but I can now see the screen that I'm on. And so what is an ally? An ally is a person who advocates against oppressions, an individual who actively supports the efforts of oppressed people from marginalized or equity-seeking groups. And in our union, that's the terminology that we use is equity-seeking group. An ally works to create and support social change rather than participate in oppressive actions. And how that support's ultimately defined very much depends on the needs of and the wishes of the oppressed people in each instance. Ally is a verb, and it's all about action. when you're an ally, it means that you do the right things that help those who need it, and it also means that you have the progressive politics, and you're able to espouse the theory behind them, but also put it into action as an ally. So, as many people before have said, being an ally is about action, and ally is it's a verb. So that's what it means, all about action. It's not an identity or a status rank. It's none of those kind of things. It's about living in a way where you espouse what you need to do as part of everything that you do in your life and how you interact with other people. It's about stepping up and challenging and making sure that you're a model, right? That you're aware of what things are going on, and you're demonstrating that, but you're also taking a step back, and we're going to talk about that further as we go along. So we'll move on to the next slide now, and I have a question for all of you. If you could advance the slide, Linz, thanks. Has anyone here acted as an ally? And you can type in your comments in the comments chat box, not in the questions, but in the chat. If you can see the chat box along the side there, it says chat. And if you can put into that box, have you acted as an ally in the past? Yes or no? So if you have, type in yes.
So I just want to mention that we have a bunch of yeses coming through, and one person is saying that participants only have a question box, not a chat box. So please use whichever communication box you have access to, and we'd love to hear from you all. Thank you.
Well, that explains why I'm getting nothing in my chat box, you guys. So it sounds like there's quite a few yeses out there. Is there anybody out there who is willing to give us one of their examples? If you are, just raise your hand and Monica will come to you and unmute you so that you can provide an example of how you've been an ally or something that you've done for allyship.
Perfect. Sorry, Dolly. I do have a hand raised here by Ty, so I'm going to unmute him. So please go ahead, Tay. You're unmuted, Tay, if you want to say anything.
Oh, is that me?
Yes.
Yep, that's you.
You had your hand raised?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I have been an ally all my life, especially before coming to this country. As a student, we were always standing in support of the oppressed people, and always fighting for their rights and our rights. So to this day, I still continue to be an ally.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Do we have someone else, Monica, that would like to share?
Yes, we do have a Corey McGawkey. I'm going to unmute you. Please go ahead. Okay, it looks like I'm having difficulty unmuting Corey for some reason. There we go. Okay, I don't know why. Sorry, Corey. Oh, there you are. Please go ahead.
Me? Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I want to start by saying many years ago that I used to not understand that, like, I recall the time when I didn't understand systematic racism. I thought it was really, you know, I thought that racism could happen, for example, to white people too in this country, and it's been upon learning over the years that it's really not designed that way, is it? And so I want to start out by saying that because I think it's important to show that people can grow and their minds can be open. And I've found more recently it's been very challenging because I know when someone tried to explain it to me the first time, because I've always considered myself very open-minded on this subject, but when someone tried to explain to me like about like the whole concept behind systematic racism and how it's built into our culture and our country and all that stuff. I remember I guess I was just so naive with my privilege that I really just couldn't see it at first, but I see it now, and I know there's a lot more to learn from. But now me trying to explain it to other people, that's a whole other ball game, and I've pissed off a lot of people in the meantime. But I'm okay with that. And I think it's hard because some of these people you really care about, and that it changes your opinion of them because then their opinions come out. But more specifically, recently I noticed a bunch of people on a social media platform talking about the Black Lives Matter campaign, and actually their counter was All Lives Matter. That's a token thing that a lot of white people will rebuttal with. And a marginalized individual was actually trying to speak up to enlighten them a little bit. And they were just like, getting right in there with their opinions and basically contradicting everything she had to say. And my goal to go in there wasn't to go, I tread lightly. I didn't go in and try and take over her voice. What I did was I just acknowledged that I learned something from her comments, and I appreciated her speaking up, and just tried to provide some support there. And then I just made a comment saying that sometimes I think it's good when whites just shut up, just shut up and listen. So, and I didn't say it that boldly. I said it a lot nicer than that to try and garner some more, support. But I think that's the biggest thing, is just in my learning and all of this has been learning to just listen and to hear what their experiences are, and understand that those aren't our experience, and we can't speak to their experiences because they're not our experiences. So that's been the biggest thing. But I see in some of my fellow whites what I saw in myself, say, like, years ago when I first heard of systematic racism and understanding that concept. You grow up learning that racism exists, but the definition of racism in the dictionary is so flat compared to the reality of it, so that's my bit about it anyways.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. I think we're going to get more into it, some of the aspects of what you shared there as we go through the presentation. So thanks a lot. Is there anyone else out there who maybe has one last final thing they want to share before we move on?
I do have a comment that was made, and then that individual says, I will chat if you want. So I'm going to just check with Bernard. Would you like to speak based on your comment in the questions? I'll just unmute you. I will attempt to unmute you. Let's see if this works. Wow, this button is very non-cooperative. I apologize. Lindsay, I'm supposed to just hit the microphone button, right, next to the name?
Yeah, it says the attendee is self-muted and is muted by an organizer, so they're muted twice. But just go ahead and read the question.
Okay, I apologize, Bernard. I'll read your comment in the questions. Bernard has written, if I can go back to that piece there. Oh, I think there it is. Oh, wow, I'm having trouble reading this as well because it's, Bernard is, someone explained it on Facebook posts like this. Black Life Matters movement is like Black people's houses are burning. The movement is the fire department going in and putting water on their houses and to put out their fires, saying, I'm going to assume that's supposed to be Black Lives Matter is like the fire department hosing down everyone's houses, even if they are not currently burning. The way they said it might have been clearer. I hope that makes sense. I apologize, Bernard, if I wasn't able to fully capture your comment there.
Yeah, I think I think that I've seen the analogy as well, and right now the crisis is with Indigenous and Black lives, and when you minimize that by saying all lives matter, right? So I think that's what Bernard is getting to. So thanks for your comment, Bernard, and we're going to move on to the next step, which is a video.
Before the video, though, we are going
Oh,
to talk
sorry.
about why our ally is important. So recognizing and acknowledging our own privileges, it enables us to work as allies towards upheaving biases, prejudices, and patterns of injustice that continue to persist within our society. Allies also help to dismantle stereotypes and provide valuable support to individuals in oppressed groups who may not have the power, status, or opportunity to influence institutional and systemic change. To be an ally is to be an advocate and a catalyst for social change, particularly in the face of our society's isms. And by isms, we mean sexism, racism, ableism, heterosexism, ageism, and classism. Without allies, we would not be able to challenge the status quo and change the world for the better. We're going to have a video right now. This is a really cool video. It was actually, as I mentioned earlier, it was a Netflix employee video, and it was put on the internet, and I watched it. I don't know how many times I've watched it, but it's really cool. And so we're going to watch it this one time and see what you get out of it the first time, and then we're going to watch it right near the end as well to see what you get out of it next time.
Hello.
What's going down?
Oi.
Hi.
مرحبا أنا نوف.
Konnichiwa.
Vamos a hablar.
This is about you.
This is about us.
I'm a father of 4 amazing kids.
A dancer, but only in my bedroom.
A believer in the power of stories.
Soy bilingüe, casi trilingüe.
An engineer, a nerd.
Sou lésbica, eu sou amiga.
Japanese, Korean.
Palestinian, a German national.
An immigrant, East Asian American woman of color.
And a Zamiltak.
あなたも私の同僚です。
We make amazing things together.
We aspire to bring joy
to the entire world.
But
You and I inhabit different worlds.
You and I have access to different spaces.
unless you've experienced it, you can never fully understand what it's like to be stuck between 2 cultures.
To pretend to be someone else in order to be safe.
To grow up in South America in Spanish, and at 19 having to relocate to the US and live in English.
To be a Black gay man from the rural South.
And be the only one in the room.
Unless you've experienced it yourself, you can never really know what it's like.
To have to listen to someone be degrading to your race and be the only person of that race in the room.
To lose friends, family, co-workers, simply because you wanted to be who you are.
To not know whether you can call the country that you love home.
To be the father of a trans daughter.
I think we all have a responsibility to make the world that we live in a little bit better. And you kind of have to start where you are.
What allyship is listening, compassion.
To immerse yourself in content and experiences and stories from groups that aren't of your own.
Anybody who sees something that isn't quite right can become an ally and help their colleagues.
When you've been through a struggle that hurt you for such a long time, I think you have this endless energy to give to others.
Anyone can be an ally, and everyone can use an ally, and you can use your privilege in the moment to extend that privilege to someone else.
I think this is what makes us human, to help others and to be empathetic.
We're all learning.
We're all learning.
E tá todo mundo aprendendo.
Mabad.
Together?
Juntos.
It is one company.
We can all be allies.
We can all be allies.
Yeah, we're going to ask you just to sit for a couple of minutes and think about how you're feeling about that video you just saw. And if you want, you can write down some ways that you think you can be a better ally. And what actions do you see in yourself? So take a couple of notes and save those notes for a little later on. We're going to use them in our discussion. So I'll wait a few seconds for you to write something down or think something in your head that you feel that that you want to discuss a little bit later on. And as I mentioned, we will be watching this video one more time. I think it's just a very powerful video, but I'll be quiet and let you write or think for a minute or so.
I just want to share while folks are taking a moment to write here, Lindsay, in the question box that one of the attendees has shared a link to in Alberta in regards to Amber Valley. So just wanted you all to know that.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I'm going to pass this over to Dolly.
Okay, Lindsay. Hey, I'm back. And Lindsay, could you put the slideshow back up? I don't see it on my screen. I'm wondering if it's not there that other people also don't see it. Thanks. So simple steps to becoming being an ally. And I think there's maybe an error in the title because there's really nothing simple about this. It's hard work. It's not easy, but we have tried to simplify things to a few points that we think are really important. There's a lot of information on how to become a better ally, but really it's about you walking in your own shoes with your own experiences and trying things. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. So becoming an ally is a decision that you make as an individual, and it's not like all of a sudden you get a button and you say, "Hey, I'm an ally." Right? I'm out there, and it's a conscious thing. It's something that you need to do to make the determination that you're going to stand up for issues, you're going to act out, you're going to monitor yourself to be inclusive, and you're going to consider the oppression of others. You're going to use your voice and actions to be an advocate and act in tandem. And this is the important part. You're acting in tandem with others who are working towards equality, fairness, and justice. It requires the work, the self-exploration, the making of the mistakes, learning from those mistakes, but most of all, it requires action. And going back to what one of the participants said about making about that action and making mistakes, it's also about the listening part. And quite frankly, the listening part is extremely important when it comes to if you've made a mistake or if you want to develop further to get that feedback from the people that you're working with. So now let's talk about the actions that anyone can start doing on their own to start developing their skills. So of course, I alluded to it in the earlier slide. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to start learning. And one of the resources that I found that I thought was just great was an article with the Huffington Post, which we took some of our material from. And so I acknowledge that. And in it, there was a fellow by the name of J.F. Gerard, who's the founder of Dark Helix Press and a marketing strategist for Rice Paper Magazine. And he said, if you choose to be an ally, you should educate yourself on the issues affecting the group and why they are issues. Don't simply just ask people who are already marginalized to do the work of educating you. Instead, do your own research and reading. You need to put in the work. So there's lots of resources out there. There's hundreds of books written. There's hundreds of stories to read so that you can put yourself in individual shoes. There's dozens and dozens and probably hundreds of websites containing different information on how to be an ally to various equity-seeking groups. So whether it's learning about the issues that affect LGBTQ 2+ community and racialized immigrants, Indigenous people, women, or anybody else, those resources are out there on how you can be a better ally to them, and then start putting into practice what you're learning. Next slide, Lindsay. And it takes courage. You have to be courageous to do this work. It's not an easy thing. It's hard to put yourself out there. You're taking a risk. You're, doing something that may be stretching your comfort zone, but it also means that you need to be honest with yourself and recognize that you have biases. We all have biases, and taking a look inside and examining what those biases are. As an ally, you have to be willing to have those uncomfortable conversations with yourself, with close friends or other allies that you have. And despite our best intentions, we might be contributing to the status quo, not even knowing it, and contributing to racism, sexism, ableism, or other forms of oppressive systems. Lindsay, you're frozen and you're on mute. Just thought I'd let you know.
Am I frozen still?
No, you're not frozen, but you were on mute, but you're good now.
Okay. Or I could have been going like this. Been frozen. Okay, so anyways, yeah, don't keep it a secret. All right. A key part of doing the work of allyship is talking about people about why exactly you're doing this. We can only make change if people know what we're doing and just what it is we're hoping to achieve. Talk to people about what you are doing and why you are taking the actions that you are taking. Leverage your privilege. It's not enough to merely recognize your privilege. You've got to put it to use by using it to intervene on behalf of those without it. Based on your personal safety concerns and comfort level, there are many actions you can take to demonstrate being an ally. For some, it might mean donating money to causes that they feel are important to the fight against oppression. For others, it could mean showing up at protests or even physically intervening, only if you feel comfortable in doing so. It's all about comfort level and what you feel you can do in the moment. If there's always something you can do, anything, but there's always something that you can do. People don't like going to protests, some do, but there's always something. Be a promoter. A lot of people have been prevented from accessing wealth because of systemic oppression. And you're going to see that in a video coming up in a little, not too long from now, including laws and discriminatory hiring practices. If you're able to suggest someone in your workplace for a project or opportunity, then go ahead and encourage them. Promote them with those that are looking for someone to take on a project or event. Advocate for a team that is diverse and representative. Sometimes this will mean not putting your own hand up, but encouraging and giving power to someone else to do so, to give them a chance. Dolly?
Thanks, Lindsay. So we need to be willing to set our own comfort aside. We need to challenge other people when they say offensive things and work to educate them. And that's not always easy. Coming in and how do you do that? How do you do it in a way that's going to be well received, right? So it's pertinent and necessary for members of dominant group to speak up and educate people of similar backgrounds. You can't always let the people who are oppressed try to speak up for themselves. When you're an ally, it means that you need to take the responsibility to be the one to speak up on behalf of other people, to give them space and to make space for them. So for example, men need to speak up when they hear men make rape jokes or victim blaming. Everybody needs to challenge racist friends and family members when they say offensive things about Indigenous, racialized, or other marginalized members of society. Sometimes people say things and they don't realize that they actually have a really negative, bad meaning. It could be something from slang or a past historical saying or whatever. But if it's known to be offensive to you, you should educate other people that, hey, did you know that that actually means something really awful, bad, and this is what it is? So sharing with people in a gentle way to educate them and get them on side so that they can understand and put themselves in the shoes of marginalized individuals is really important. It's also important to, as a heterosexual cisgendered individual, to challenge homophobic statements. And there's a multitude of other examples that could go along with that. The other thing is, the next slide, is listening. It's really important to listen. Sometimes being an ally means you're going to be corrected. That's not the time to step in and say, but just wait a minute. It's the time to sit back and say, tell me more about what happened there and what's going on. Our intentions may have been good, but it's about the impact of what's going on. It's never about intention, always about impact. And if someone from a marginalized equity-seeking group is offended and telling you why, be compassionate, empathetic, think about the situation from their point of view, and most of all, be quiet and listen. It's the best way to make your good intentions clear, and it's the best way to learn. And it reminded me of this quote that I went online and found when I was at a seminar where an elder was doing a teaching. And the quote is, "The Great Spirit gave you 2 ears and only 1 mouth so that you can talk half as much as you listen." And that's an important point. We want to maintain hope. We're stronger together, and we can't force people to see others as having many layers of identity or being intersectional, but we can all work to move beyond that in ourselves. We can take responsibility and recognize that we all have some type of intersecting oppression. Our nationality, our gender, it could be our sexual orientation, race, class, or our ability. And we're not just made up of one individual thing. We're kind of like an onion. You peel us back and you're going to keep finding more and more and more of our internal identities. We can arise above the systems of oppression that oppress against these different identities and work to be a willing participant. There's a difference between being a willing participant in discrimination and having normal reactions to a racist society. We're going to watch a video now, and it's a short video. We have more steps or suggestions, but this lady, her name is Francesca Ramsey, and she has a quick video here called 5 Steps to Becoming an Ally. Great video. And she's also an actress, comedian, video blogger with over 29 million views on YouTube and over 500,000 followers across Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Her videos have been featured on MTV, the New York Times, the BBC, and in 2012, she had a YouTube that was viewed 5 million times called Bleep, White Girls Say to Black Girls. In 5 days, 5 million views, garnering coverage from MSNBC, ABC, and Anderson Cooper. Most recently, she worked as a writer and contributor on The Nightly Show with Larry Wilmore and on Comedy Central. She's currently the host of MTV's web series Decoded, and she has a great YouTube channel you can subscribe to that is really upbeat and easy to listen to. Lindsay?
Hey friends! So I'm trying something different with my setup, and I don't know if it's working, but you will deal. Imagine your friend is building a house, and they ask you to help, but you've never built a house before. So it'd probably be a good idea for you to put on some protective gear and listen to the person in charge, otherwise someone's gonna get seriously hurt. Look, I'm helping! It's the exact same idea when it comes to being an ally. An ally is a person that wants to fight for the equality of a marginalized group that they're not a part of. We need your help building this house, but you probably should listen so you know what to do first. Let's do this. So here are my 5 tips for being a good ally. Understand your privilege. Now, a lot of people get hung up on the word privilege, so let me break it down for you nice and easy. Privilege does not mean that you are rich, that you've had an easy life, that everything's been handed to you and you've never had to struggle or work hard. All it means is that there are some things in life that you will not experience or ever have to think about just because of who you are. It's kind of like those horses that have those blinders on. They can see be just fine. There's just a whole bunch of stuff on the side that they don't even know exists. So for example, there are currently 29 states where you can legally be fired for being gay, and there are 34 states where you can legally be fired for being trans. Now, as a straight cis woman, those are things that I don't have to ever think about if I don't want to. I'm not gonna be fired because I'm straight, and I'm not gonna be fired because I am cis. So it makes sense that before I can fight for the rights of others, I have to understand what rights I have and others don't. That's privilege. Listen and do your homework. It sounds like a no-brainer, but it's not possible for you to learn if you aren't willing to listen. So you gotta know when to zippa the lippa. I don't know. You get what I mean. But that's the thing that's so cool about social media. There are so many people sharing their stories all around the world and connecting with people that they normally would never get a chance to without the power of the internet. So do your homework. Start reading blogs, tweets, news articles, and stories so that you can get caught up on the issues that are important to the communities that you want to support. Speak up, but not over. If the Fight for Equality was a girl group, the ally wouldn't be the lead singer or the second lead singer. They'd be Michelle. An ally's job is to support. You want to make sure that you use your privilege and your voice to educate others, but make sure to do it in such a way that does not speak over the community members that you're trying to support or take credit for things that they are already saying. This isn't Mario Kart. Stay in your lane. Realize that you're going to make mistakes and apologize when you do. Nobody's perfect. Unlearning problematic things takes time and work, so you are bound to mess up and trip and fall. Oh God. But don't worry, you can brush yourself off and get right back up. I'm back up! Just remember that it's not about your intent, it's about your impact. So when you get called out, make sure to listen, apologize, commit to changing your behavior, and move forward. Last but certainly not least, actually the most important thing on this list, is remember that ally is a verb. Saying you're an ally is not enough. You gotta do the work. 1 through 4. 1 through 4. As always, there are links in the video description box to some of the things I mentioned in this video, along with some resources that have been really helpful for me as I've gone along in my journey to be more conscious. So I want to hear from you in the comments. What are some sites that you suggest checking out, and what are some things that have helped you become a better ally? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye!
You're muted.
Lindsay, can you unmute yourself?
Yep, I'm unmuted. Me trying to think of like, oh yeah. Anyways, we have some do's and don'ts that we want to talk about.
Can I just
1.
mention that a few people missed the video. There was some audio issues for them, or it was frozen. So perhaps we can make some of these resources available to the attendees to see after the fact. We can send it out.
Well, this webinar is being recorded, so they'll be able to get it through that way as well. But we can figure out links and that's not a problem. Okay, so the do's and the don'ts. First of all, do be open to listening. Listening is so very important, as Dolly mentioned earlier. Be aware of your implicit biases. We all have biases, no matter who we are. And sometimes, I mean, we have to admit that to ourselves to understand. Do your research to learn more about the history of the struggle in which you are participating. Again, I'm going to talk about, we're going to have a really good video coming up very shortly about that. Do the inner work to figure out a way to acknowledge how you participate in oppressive systems. Do the outer work and figure out just how to change the oppressive systems. Do amplify the voices of those without your privilege, both online and when physically present. Do learn how to listen. There's that word again, listen, and accept criticism with grace, even if it's a little bit uncomfortable. Let's talk about some don'ts. Do not expect to be taught or shown. Take it upon yourself to use the tools around you to learn and to answer your own questions. Do not participate for the gold medal in the oppression Olympics. You don't need to compare how your struggle was just as bad as somebody else. It's not all about you. Do not behave as though you know best, because we don't. Unless we walked in that person's shoes, we don't. Do not take credit for the labor of those who are marginalized and did the work before you stepped into the picture. And do not assume that every member of an underinvested group feels oppressed. We're going to watch another video about systemic racism, and it will give you a little bit of background and help you understand, because the whole thing about being an ally is education, and I hope this helps you to learn a little more.
This is Jamal. Jamal is a boy who lives in a poor neighborhood. He has a friend named Kevin, who lives in a wealthy neighborhood. All of Jamal's neighbors are African American, and all of Kevin's neighbors are white. Because Jamal's school district is mostly funded by property taxes, his school is not very well funded. His classrooms are overcrowded, his teachers are underpaid, and he doesn't have access to high-quality tutors or extracurricular activities. Kevin's school district is also funded by property taxes, so his school is very well funded. His classrooms are never crowded, his teachers are very well paid, and he has access to high-quality tutors and lots of extracurricular activities. Kevin and Jamal live only a few streets away from each other. So how come they're growing up in such different worlds with such different opportunities for success? The answer has to do with America's history of systemic racism. To understand it better, let's look at what life was like for Kevin and Jamal's grandparents. Decades after the Civil War, many government agencies started to draw maps dividing cities into sections that were either desirable or undesirable for investment. This practice was called redlining, and it usually blocked off entire black neighborhoods from access to private and public investment. Banks and insurance companies used these maps for decades to deny black people loans and other services based purely on race. Historically speaking, owning a home and getting a college education is the easiest way for an American family to build wealth. But when Jamal's grandparents wanted to buy a house, the banks refused because they lived in a neighborhood that was redlined. So Jamal's grandparents were not able to buy a home, and because colleges could prevent them from attending through legal segregation, their options for higher education were really scarce. Kevin's grandparents, on the other hand, got a low-interest loan to buy their first house and got accepted into a handful of top universities, which traditionally only accepted white students. This opened up a wealth of opportunities that they were able to pass on to their kids and grandkids. Even as late as the 1980s, an investigation into the Atlanta real estate market showed that banks were more willing to lend to low-income white families than to middle or upper-income African American families. As a result, today, for every $100 of wealth held by a white family, black families have $5.04. A 2017 study confirms that redlining is still affecting home values in major cities like Chicago today. This explains how Kevin and Jamal inherited vastly different circumstances. Unfortunately, the story doesn't end there. A big part of systemic racism is implicit bias. These are prejudices in society that people are not aware that they have. Let's go back to Kevin and Jamal. Against all odds, Jamal manages to be the only student from his high school to get accepted into a great university, the same one that Kevin and his high school friends are attending. But after Kevin and Jamal both graduate, Jamal notices that his resume isn't drawing as much interest as Kevin's, even though they graduated from the same program with the exact same GPA. Unfortunately for Jamal, studies show that resumes with white-sounding names get twice as many callbacks as identical resumes with black-sounding names. Implicit bias is one of the reasons why the black unemployment rate is twice the rate of white unemployment, even among college graduates today. You can see evidence of systemic racism in every area of life. The disparities in family wealth, incarceration rates, political representation, and education are all examples of systemic racism. Unfortunately, the biggest challenge with systemic racism is that there's no single person or entity responsible for it, which makes it very hard to solve. So what can you do? The first thing you can do is work towards becoming more aware of your own implicit biases. What are some prejudices that you might hold that you're not aware of? Second, let's acknowledge that the consequences of slavery and Jim Crow laws are still affecting access to opportunity today. As a result, we should support systemic changes that create more equal opportunities for everyone. Increasing public school funding and making it independent from property taxes would be a great start, so that poor and wealthy districts can receive equal access to resources. Systemic problems require systemic solutions. Luckily, we're all part of the system, which means that we all have a role to play in making it better. Peace.
Ollie?
Okay, thanks everybody. That you may wonder why we used a video that's US based, and I just want to say that when it comes to systemic discrimination and racism, the impact is still the same here in Canada, although the methodology that was used in the past may have been slightly different. The result is the same here in Canada, and we're facing the same type of issues, regardless of how it was done. So we have many systems in place here in Canada due to colonization. And an example that's parallel, I think, to redlining as an Indigenous person is when the government during colonization relegated Indigenous people to the reserve system. And there became two different standards in society, much in the same way as it is as happened in the US in redlining of cities and not investing properly in those communities, not supporting those communities properly has resulted in the disparity and the racism and the oppression that Indigenous people feel today. So going forward, and I'm sure there's other examples of other groups that have been marginalized in the same way through systemic processes. And what we're hoping to do is now think about having a bit of a discussion on what are some of the steps that we can do now. And what we'd like to focus on is your ideas, and in discussion and either questions with Marianne, what are we going to do in our union? What are we going to do in our workplaces and in our community? Initially, we thought about focusing just on the workplace, but really we're interconnected beings, and work isn't everything that we are. We also have a home life. We also have different community groups and community people that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. And if we're going to be true allies, we need to be that ally no matter where we're going. We need to have our ally hat on, and it just needs to become part of our being. So let's open up that discussion, and we'll have some questions and or comments to Marianne. Marianne, do you want to start out by saying anything first?
There we go. Sorry, I think my computer's kind of freezing. It's like telling me it's getting late. No, I appreciate the information. The videos were great, and also some of the members' comments at the beginning. So, you know, I'm here to listen if there's ideas to see that we can move forward, and just looking forward to any discussion.
I just want to say that I don't see any hands raised. So if you'd like to speak, if you can indicate that. I believe you do need to accept the open audio mic in order to connect to speak.
Lindsay, you were muted.
There must be thinking. That's a good thing. I think my mic is muting me all by itself. I swear I didn't touch it. Is there anybody? If there's nobody there, we can continue on. We're going to do a short poll, and as is the last poll, we want you to just type your response, the number of your response in the question area. So I'll bring it up right now. Okay, so we're asking, as a result of taking this webinar, how confident are you that you'll be able to act as an ally in your workplace, your union, and your community? Are you not confident at all? Are you not very confident? confident, somewhat confident, or very confident? Just type your response in the question area, please.
I'm liking what I'm seeing. There's a lot of you that are saying that you're confident, somewhat confident, or very confident, and I'm really pleased about that. Well, I think 100% of you are confident or greater, and one of you have said that you've always been confident, but you feel more confident now than you did before. So that's nice. Thank you.
Okay, that's great to hear. That's great to hear.
I have a comment from somebody here on that question that was asked of what the union can do.
Here too that came up in the comments section that you can work on. Did you want to cover that, or did you
I'm sorry,
they feel the union can continue to take a strong role and propose and am I breaking up?
Yeah, you're out of sync right now. Isn't technology wonderful?
Okay. Why don't do you want to go ahead and I know my computer's kind of going a little bit here too. Oh, the challenges, people. I see some folks are putting in some resources, and we're going to share those resources. And also there was a suggestion here about the washrooms, to work on having those to be washrooms for everyone, the washroom issue. Instead of having male, female, there should be non-gendered washrooms. Also, what I see here is, and it's hard for me to scroll through because I keep freezing. Nope, I don't see anything else new. There's a lot of suggestions around some resources, which I think we'll put in our reply to you in the morning to make sure that you get the resources that people have experienced and suggested. Lindsay, do you have anything else you want to say?
Not at this point. We'll go back into we're going to rewatch the Netflix video, and hopefully after the information that you've just had in this past hour, that this video sets in a little more.
Hello.
What's going down?
Oi.
Hi.
مرحبا أنا نوف.
Konnichiwa.
Vamos a hablar.
This is about you.
This is about us.
I'm a father of 4 amazing kids.
A dancer, but only in my bedroom.
A believer in the power of stories.
Soy bilingüe, casi trilingüe.
An engineer. A nerd.
Sou lésbica. Eu sou amiga.
Japanese, Korean,
Palestinian, a German national.
An immigrant, East Asian American woman of color.
And a Zamiltak.
あなたも私の同僚です。
We make amazing things together.
We aspire to bring joy
To the entire world.
But
You and I inhabit different worlds.
You and I have access to different spaces.
unless you've experienced it, you can never fully understand what it's like to be stuck between two cultures.
To pretend to be someone else in order to be safe.
to grow up in South America and Spanish, and at 19 having to relocate to the US and live in English.
To be a black gay man from the rural South.
And be the only one in the room.
Unless you've experienced it yourself, you can never really know what it's like.
To have to listen to someone be degrading to your race and be the only person of that race in the room.
To lose friends, family, co-workers, simply because you wanted to be who you are.
To not know whether you can call the country that you love home.
To be the father of a trans daughter.
I think we all have a responsibility to make the world that we live in a little bit better. And you kind of have to start where you are.
What allyship is listening, compassion.
To immerse yourself in content and experiences and stories from groups that aren't of your own.
Anybody who sees something that isn't quite right can become an ally and help their colleagues.
When you've been through a struggle that hurt you for such a long time, I think you have this endless energy to give to others.
Anyone can be an ally, and everyone can use an ally, and you can use your privilege in the moment to extend that privilege to someone else.
I think this is what makes us human, to help others and to be empathetic.
We are all learning.
We're all learning.
E tá todo mundo aprendendo.
Mabad.
Together.
Juntos.
It is one company.
We can all be allies.
We can all be allies.
I think what's important to understand in the very last sentence, we can all be allies. Doesn't matter who you are and where you come from, you can still be an ally. And I can tell you from personal experience, when I worked for the federal government for agriculture, I was on a committee called the Inclusiveness Management Committee, and there was 15 of us, and we were allies for francophones, for people of color, persons with disabilities. That was our job with the agriculture department, is to be allies and to advocate for them. And so it doesn't matter who you are, you can become an ally. Do we have any more questions before we ask Marianne to say a few words?
I have someone who's raised their hand, and it's Ty. So Ty, I think you're gonna have to accept that I'm opening your mic on your end in order for it to open. You have the mic now, Ty.
Okay, thank you. My question is, it is okay to be an ally and we can all be allies, but to bring about a fundamental change, there should be a will from the people who are in political helm of the country. In South Africa, they fought against apartheid for several years until F.W. Clerk sat down with Mandela and they agreed, and finally South Africa was liberated. In the States, you see how many Black people are being killed unlawfully and unjust. How many Georges, how many Trayvon Martins should be killed before the political people in the political power change their hearts? In this country, the first Prime Minister of Canada, John A. Macdonald, he said, take that Indian out of that boy. This is completely unacceptable. So what should we do to make these political leaders realize, yes, educate them. If you're there, if they don't want to listen to you, if they don't want to educate themselves, if they don't want to take actions like Donald Trump, nothing will change. In the 60s, we all know how the civil rights movements were going on in the States. In the 21st century, we are still behind the 60s. Are people not really listening, those who are in the political power? So something else should be done too, so that we can move a little bit faster. So my question is, what should be done?
Want to take that, Dolly? You want to take it, or you want me to take it, or Marianne?
Oh, it's Marianne?
There's so many answers to that.
You go ahead, Linz.
Sorry. Go
Oh,
ahead,
there she
Lindsay.
is.
Okay. There's so much that we can do. For example, you can talk to your MP. If you feel that your MP is listening to you, your MP is not in a job for life, right? They're elected every number of years. So if you don't feel your MP is listening to you, then you can work to get that MP removed. So, and you're right, it's leadership by example. And we see that happening right now in the United States, where we have lack of leadership by a poor example. So consequently, there's ways to do that in a political system.
Yeah, I think, that is a really hard question, right? And I think I saw another question in the chat box from another member about, when, you have systemic racism openly in your workplace and you try to challenge it and as an ally, and, you become the target. Nobody said this was easy. Nobody said that, you're going to challenge someone and, it's sunshine and butterflies and they're going to say, oh my God, in 3 sentences, you reversed everything that I've known since I've been a child. It doesn't work that way. But in your heart, if you know that it's wrong and you speak, you've done the right thing. So, there's so many different things you can do, whether it's, one-on-one challenging those things in your workplace, whether it is, and keep in mind, in most workplaces, there is an anti-discrimination clause in your collective agreement. So I will tell you that in my workplace, when the movie Brokeback Mountain came out, somebody put up a movie poster and put names on it. And the person that it was targeted to was a straight man, but he wouldn't speak out. So I did. I went to every cubicle. I ripped it down. And when it came back up, I ripped it down again. And when it came back up, I ripped it down again. And every time I did it, I made sure there was people in the it's hard. It's hard because people will take it different ways. You may lose friendships. You may create more tense workplace relationships. But in your heart, what's the right thing to do in those situations? And as Lindsay said, absolutely. On the other issues, your politicians are there to listen to you. Will you change their mind? Some of them, possibly. You may not change their mind, but if enough people are speaking, they will know that they need to do something whether they want to or not. They may never believe, but they will do so because if they get enough calls, if they get enough letters, if they have enough people doing a sit-in, they will have to act. Sorry, that was my little rant. Go ahead.
Ranting's fine. And just to accentuate the importance of allies, we look back to the 60s and the civil rights movement. Look how far they came because of allies, right? They were a huge part of it all. And, they were successful in what they wanted to achieve, but allyship is so important. Do we have any other further questions or comments?
I have a question here that somebody asked and they weren't sure when it would be a good time. So I'm just going to ask it on their behalf. I don't see their hand up, but they did put it in the chat or in the question area. And they'd like to know when you're at the workplace and you get backlash or, ostracized for having been an ally and being the one to speak out, when you start getting treated differentially, what should you do about that, Marianne? Any suggestions? You just gave a great example of how you acted on behalf and were an ally, and what kind of repercussions maybe did you have from that?
Well, you know, especially in our workplaces, and this is kind of where I was going. I'd seen that question, so you know, this is kind of where I was going. We have no discrimination, no harassment clauses in our collective agreements. Under health and safety legislation, your employer is required to provide a violence-free workplace. Harassment and racism is violence. It is mental, it is psychological, and if there is a toxic culture in that workplace, it needs to be called out. So, you know, that can be done through union management meetings to say, look, we're experiencing some significant situations. We need some mandatory training here. You need to shut this down. You need to, basically, the employer needs to set the bar that employees need to, you know, stay on. So, you know, first step would be talk to your local, see if they have a union management meeting come up. Can they bring up the issue and say, look, like, this is getting to a point where it is dividing employees, and you have a responsibility to address this. Nobody's listening. Hey, you can file a grievance. You know, that's because if you feel it's a violation of the collective agreement, you know, take a look around and see if there's others that maybe aren't, you know, they're not participating in those inappropriate racist discussions and are maybe looking uncomfortable. Maybe you build your own set of allies in the workplace so that it's not always you challenging. You know, I have to say, so I grew up small Ukrainian town, southern Saskatchewan, completely right-wing, completely racist. I didn't recognize it at the time. I don't remember participating in that. I hope I didn't. But once I left and realized, I kind of went, that's not right. And, you know, you make those decisions. So sitting at the family Christmas dinner table and, you know, my dad, this one, that one is making comments and you kind of go, oh, it's not worth it. You know, he's 80 years old. But there were a few times where I had to shut it down because it's like, no, where did you hear? Like, that's not right. These are people too. And, you know, as we saw in the video, the fellow who said he's an ally for his trans daughter. You never know what's going to happen. You have no idea. So, you know, it might take that to change your mind, but that's somebody's daughter. That's somebody's mother. That's somebody's father. And they have a support system, and you have no right to attack that. I don't know if that was an answer or not, but rant number 2.
That's all good.
I think that was pretty good, Marianne.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Monica, any further questions?
So I think
Well, I don't see anyone's hands raised, and I did put that in the chat group that if anyone did want to speak, to please raise your hand and I would unmute you. As for questions, I think, Dolly, you've been going through those, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've answered most of the questions on the board, either right in the question chat if it was just a quick question, or online. And I just want to announce before we all go here that the final webinar of our series is next week, Thursday, June 25th at 6 p.m. and it is Alternative Dispute Resolution Mechanisms. Very exciting. It's a webinar that is going to have panelists Cheryl Robinson-Wilson, who is a G&A officer from Ontario, working out of the Toronto office, Jackie Oswald, and who is RVP with USJE, and Pamela Sahota, who works in our very own Calgary office as a G&A officer as well. So if you want to know more about alternative dispute resolution mechanisms and how they might be the right thing for your workplace or your problem, or to bring better solutions or resolutions to your workplace, please tune in and sign up for that webinar.
Great. Hey, Dolly,
And
can
I
I
wanna thank
add
everybody.
one thing?
Yeah.
So I also want to mention, I'm not sure exactly where everyone is from, but here in the prairies, we do have a number of human rights committees. So we have a human rights committee based in Edmonton, Calgary, Regina, and Winnipeg, and in Prince Albert, we have a regional Indigenous Peoples Circle. So those committees are available to any member in good standing. Now, for those committees, you must self-identify as an equity group member to participate. So allies who are not part of those of the identified equity groups cannot be a voting participant or attend. But the committees do a lot of actions and events that everyone is welcome to attend. So if you are interested in that, or if you self-identify as female, you can also participate in our women's committees. Even if you live outside of the town, the city, you live outside of Calgary, you can participate by phone. The regional office can do that. We've been doing Skype meetings, and we can definitely do that. Within those committees, the one thing that, we do a lot of awareness and recognition of certain days, be it Indigenous Day or Black History Month or Asian Heritage Month. But that's also the venue to take action. And that's where we can, as members, we can come together to challenge some of these things. So if it's something you're interested in, please contact your nearest regional office. They can get you on the email list so that you get notices of meetings. And you can also go to the Prairie's website to read some minutes and see who the executive members are if you want to contact them and ask them questions. So I offer it as a place to take what you've learned and your desire to take action. That's a great place to do it. So, and thank you everyone for attending tonight, and thank you to Dolly and Lindsay and Monica in the back for putting this together. 2 nights in a row, Lindsay. I don't know. We got to stop meeting like this, but 2 very different events, but really contributing to us being able to connect with members in the Prairie. So thank you for putting this together, and for everyone for being on the webinar tonight.
And thank you, Marianne. We appreciate you being here night after night.
Thanks, everybody. Remember, it's a verb, an action. Go do it.
Have
Thanks
a wonderful
again.
rest of your evening.